Good morning, beautiful people. Welcome back to another video. Actually, it's Sunday morning, 7 a.m. I'm out here filming this video for you. And after this, I'm actually going to go for another half marathon run. So as you can see, I really believe in the mantra, win the morning, win the day. And yeah, it's all about using your spare time, your weekends, etc. to work towards your dreams. So in this video, actually, I want to talk to you about Airbnb rental arbitrage. Now, that's a topic you may not have come across before. Personally, I haven't either. But now the fact that I'm looking with my wife to buy our first Airbnb property, that's why I've been reading more about Airbnb recently and obviously came across this topic, which is not really something new. In the US, they have been doing this for a while, but in Europe and other parts of the world, I haven't seen too many people talking about it or actually doing it. Essentially what it is, you manage to find an apartment from a landlord that you don't own, you just rent it from him, normal rental contract, but you manage to get a clause in there that allows you to sublease it to somebody else. So not sub-rent it, but to put it on a short-term rental. And this way, basically, you can put it up on Airbnb. And then obviously the idea is to make a higher return from the Airbnb income than what you pay to the owner for the rent. And the difference is what you pocket in terms of profit. Now, sounds very simple, but obviously there's a few things you should be considering. And I'll let you know in the end whether it might be worth it or not. So when you listen to the YouTubers and people actually doing this kind of rental arbitrage in the US, for example, I mean, the profits seem astronomical, though in Europe might be slightly different numbers. And also, of course, we need to here consider the legislation, right? Europe is highly regulated of Airbnb and short-term rentals. So you need to check whether or not that's actually allowed in your city where you live. Now, if you want to get started on this, the first thing you want to be doing, obviously, is your market research, right? To look up in your area, and ideally, I recommend to do it in the city where you live to get it started, even though some people do it remotely, but I think that's especially tricky if you're getting started and doing it the first time, just to want to give it a go. So do it in the city where you live. And then go on Airbnb itself, right? Have a look of what's happening. You know, how many apartments are listed in that particular area that you like? What are the average rental prices? And you can also check the comparative numbers on websites like AirDNA, which basically pulls in the numbers, actual numbers from Airbnb, etc. And you can really get a good idea of how much you can expect to get in return, because you don't want to end up paying, I don't know, 2,000 euros for rent, but then only make 2,000 euros in Airbnb and basically still have costs, etc. and then ultimately not make a profit, right? The whole point of doing this arbitrage is to turn the profit. So you want to be very careful and confident in your numbers. So once you did find the area in your city that you like, then obviously next you want to reach out and check for listings of people renting apartments near there so that you can have a look as to what you can rent and then obviously flip it later on. Now that's the easy part. You go on any property websites in your city. It really depends where you live, but usually every big city, country, they have their leading property websites where you can look for apartment rentals and obviously filter by guest rooms and many other things. Some of the apartments do have to filter or filtering for sublease. So that basically gives you as the renter the opportunity to sublease it. Now, usually landlords are hesitant to do that and they may not list it right away. So nonetheless, whether they have it or not, what you want to do is shortlist those apartments that are interesting to you, preferably without furniture, because usually if you rent with furniture, you're always going to be paying a premium. So I think better to have it without furniture and then contact those landlords and have an open discussion, you know, that you're interested, but really be transparent from the beginning that you're planning to do a short-term rental with it. Now, that's a very crucial step because you want to be very open. If you don't say that and you do a short-term rental, you know, people talk about it, the landlord might get to know it, and he might actually fine you, he might kick you out, so that may not end up very well for you. So be very straightforward and open. And you may ask, but Kai, why doesn't the landlord do that himself? Because actually, doing an Airbnb takes work, right? You have to do all the logistics, the bookings, the cleaning afterwards, coordination with the tenant. So it takes a lot of work, and not every landlord is keen to do that. They rather have a monthly paycheck that comes to them. So you want to do a good job of upselling in the way that it's good for the landlord, while not upselling it too much that they might get into the idea of doing it themselves. What you can do, in case you really see this apartment to be a perfect fit, sometimes it's worth to pay a little premium over what they ask in terms of rent, or agree on the longer lease. You might extend the term from 6 months to 12 months, committed rent for them. So, you know, that's something for discussion where in the end the landlord may say, okay, I understand, you know, it's a little bit risky for me. And at the same time, you can say you will be an Airbnb host. So your interest is to get high reviews, because the more reviews and better reviews you have, the higher you can charge for it. So obviously you're going to be in the same boat as the owner itself. So you really want to take good care of the apartment. So once you manage to agree with the landlord on it, obviously next up, you want to furnish the property. So here's the part we're going to use a little bit of money. So people say, depending on where you live, etc., it can be anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 euros, because usually what you're going to have to pay is the first month of rent, obviously for the owner, 1 month's deposit, and then a couple of furniture. So this is where you're going to buy a little bit of furniture, obviously, depending on what it is. Some places allow you to rent furniture, but here you might invest a little bit. You might also have some extra stuff in your own house that you can use for there. honestly, don't overspend on some fancy designer furniture. So once again, depends where you're going to rent it, etc. But usually, get some nice, fresh stuff. Even IKEA is good enough. But then get some decorations going, some amenities, some towels, some scents, etc. Make it a little bit nice, Instagrammable. Put some welcome amenities, some designer books, Tom Ford book on the table, etc. Immediately it will look so much nicer on the pictures. And that's the important part. Get some amazing pictures. I mean, I still see properties that look so bad on Airbnb, I would never book them. And that's just down to the pictures, right? That's the first impression you get of the property. So make sure it's beautified and you get some good shots that you can use to do your listing online. Now in the US, they always recommend you to start your own LLC, basically register your own company. Honestly, I believe if you're just starting doing it the first time, you might just do it as a natural person. But then later on, if you see success or you want to scale it and do more of those kind of apartments, definitely it's better to register on the company because you detach yourself from any personal liability that might come with this kind of model, right? So in the beginning, I don't think it's needed, but of course you should check your own local laws and requirements for that. Some countries also require for you to pass some kind of test if you want to accommodate some people. So you might have to do some hygiene tests where some authorities come, run through your properties and give you approval. So obviously it depends where you live, so look out for that. Right, so once you're done with this, obviously it comes to listing your property. And here you want to use ideally as many platforms as possible. Now the big ones are obviously Airbnb, Booking.com in many European places, but there might also be locally other places that are very strong in short-term rental in your respective countries, so look out for that. But definitely be on Airbnb, Booking.com, and the way you list your property is also super important. You really want to spend good amount of time to list it properly, list all the highlights, make it SEO friendly so that when people look for it, they really find you. So the longer the text, the more keywords are in there, the more likely a property is going to be found. By the way, guys, this is the smallest street in Vilnius, actually. As you can see, it has a street name. So let me take you through it. You can see how narrow it is. I mean, this is a really crazy little street. And yeah, it actually is a street towards a courtyard. So a very interesting one. You want to make sure you keep your diet, otherwise you won't be managing to get to your home. But yeah, really cool. I mean, as you can see, Vilnius is an amazing city. Definitely worth to check out if you haven't been here. All right, let me make my way back here. Probably wouldn't do an Airbnb in the back of this courtyard, but interesting nonetheless. Right, and that's essentially it. Obviously, in the beginning, it's got to be a little bit slower once you don't have reviews. I mean, ask yourself, would you book any Airbnb without any reviews? Probably not. So what some people do is rent it out to their friends and family at a lower rate in the beginning, so you pay a lower commission to Airbnb. Obviously, it makes it much cheaper. They can leave some good reviews. Obviously, they stay there. It's not fake, it's organic. But, you just kind of get the ball rolling, start getting reviews. And then once you have a couple, then eventually others might book at the full rate. And the price that you obviously charge for the apartment, once again, goes back to the first point of doing your market research, competitive research. If you charge a property 3 times the amount of a similar accommodation next door in the same area, probably you're not going to get bookings unless you have really something amazing in there that really justifies it, such as a jacuzzi on the rooftop, for example. Fine, then you have a special USP, unique selling point that you can offer. Otherwise, if it's fairly similar, you should really benchmark yourself across your competitors. And with this, congratulations, your business is up and running and you can wait to get your first bookings and obviously profit. And hopefully, as I said, over time, you pocket more than you spend on the rent. So that's the idea. Obviously, there's no guarantee in life, right? And I made it overly simple. Obviously, it also takes a lot of work, right? Because you need to coordinate, the booking request, the timing, the scheduling, the pricing, the cleaning afterwards, in case there's maintenance and repairs, passing over the key, because if it's not your own property, you may not be able to install a smart lock, which really helps because that's usually when you can send a code digitally to the person renting, so that makes things easier. So, there's a little bit of coordination in the beginning. You might be more hands-on, but what a lot of people do, if they start seeing success, they obviously start scaling and then start having a team, dedicated cleaners who clean all their apartment, 1-2 maintenance guys that help them to fix the properties if there's any need. What I don't recommend is using an agency. So unless you own the property outright, that's your own, then the opportunity to make more profit from it is much higher. But when you just rent it, most likely your profit margins are going to be way less. So definitely using an agency, they're going to charge you anywhere from 20 to 30% of your income for the services, and that might really reduce drastically your margins, because don't forget, you're also going to have to pay tax on your income. You're going to have to pay a fee to Airbnb for doing the bookings, etc. The cleaning fee, usually it's paid on top of your bookings by the guest itself, but sometimes it may not be enough to cover, so it depends on the situation. The utilities for the property is also going to be your problem, because obviously you're the renter, so you're going to have to pay for it. The internet, things like cleaning, if you have some kind of amenities that you offer, like coffee, etc., you're going to have to pay for this as well. So yes, there will be a number of costs associated. It's not just the pure revenue you get from your bookings, obviously. So As I said, it can really work. I see a lot of people in the US where it does work. I know some people in Europe who do it and also do it quite successfully, especially if you scale, because from one unit, I personally don't think you're going to make 5,000 euros in passive income every single month. And it's not really passive, right? As I said, it's quite active. You have to do quite a bit with it, but it can work, especially once you add more properties to the mix. I think you can really start building up a nice, sizable side income, if not full-time business. But at the same time, it may also not work, right? Like any business, there's opportunities, there's also problems. It really depends on you, what you do. I know so many people who are successful dropshipping, so many people failing, so many people successful investing, so many people failing. So like anything, ultimately it comes down to you, how much you want it. I just wanted to share it. I thought it's an interesting business model, which is not talked about so much when people talk about side hustle, etc. So I really see good potential over there. All right, guys, I'm going to have to wrap this video up over here because it's actually time for me to start running my half marathon. Next up, check out this video over here. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you want to see more real estate related content in the future, let me know in the comments so I know you like it. I'm going to do more videos about that. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks so much for watching. Stay healthy, get wealthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.